Please welcome David Bergen to the stage.
I'm going to read from the beginning of the book, a little bit in, and really all you have to need to know is that it takes place in 1950. Hope is seeing a man called Roy who works in an auto dealership. She worked that summer before the wedding as an operator at the telephone office in Eden, taking care of the switchboard. She wore earphones and overheard conversations she should not have been privy to, was in fact expected to turn off the connection. But there were times when a certain inflection in the voice or the sultry response of a woman made her hang on to the conversation a little longer than required. She discovered that Mrs. Corney Duick was an incredible gossip, and that Ed Weens, who owned a chain of grocery stores throughout southern Manitoba, was probably having an affair with his secretary, Leona. Ed would often call her long distance when he was out of town. Hope would patch him through and hear Leona's voice answer, and once, before she could turn him off, Ed said, "Sweetheart." It quickened her breath and made her queasy as well. She didn't like the power of that knowledge. Roy liked to call her as well. He'd dial 0, and when she answered, "Hello, operator," he'd say, "I just wanted to hear your voice." And they'd talk, and sometimes at length, though she would have to keep cutting him off and then come back to him, and so their conversations were elliptical and disjointed. One night he phoned her and said that he was driving up to Fort Frances the following morning just for the day. He had to deliver some parts. Would she like to come along? She said she might. She had the day off, and she'd never been to Fort Frances before. "We'll take the American route," he said, "though it's not much different, but at least you can say you visited Minnesota." Later, after the trip, she would realize that she had taken quite a risk in going along with Roy. What turned out to be a romantic 2 days might just as easily have dissolved their relationship if Roy had been a different man. But he wasn't. He was Roy. They stopped for a chicken sandwich and mushroom soup in Bodette on the American side. When the waitress, a very pretty girl who looked like Marilyn Monroe, delivered their food, she laid it out before them and then stood back and said, "You two wouldn't be newlyweds, would you? It's just you look like it." "Oh, no," Roy said, and he laughed. After the waitress had gone, Hope said, "Are you embarrassed by me, Roy?" "What do you mean? Of course I'm not." "Well, she's a very pretty girl, that waitress." "Huh, she is." "You didn't want her to think we were married." "Well, we aren't married." "Well, we're almost married, Roy. In a month, you could have at least told her we were engaged." "But you could have told her that, Hope." "Well, she was talking to you. She didn't even look at me." "Are you jealous?" He was grinning. "Well, should I be? If I hadn't been here, sitting across from you, would you have had a longer conversation with Norma Jean?" "Who?" "The waitress. She looks just like Marilyn Monroe." "She does?" "Oh, Roy, you're impossible."
Can I ask a question of David, actually, because it kind of segues into it, and you said you went to another country and read it from a woman's perspective. What was the hardest thing about it, but it might not have been hard. Did you find that you had to sort of constantly be thinking, I have this other body? Or
No, it wasn't like I was transporting myself into another physical person. It was very, very much of reading and writing. They're very closely tied, and they require empathy and a movement into the other. And if you can manage that as a reader, the writer can also do that, or vice versa. And so it's a matter of simply imagining the world that person came from, and the experiences and the troubles and the joys. I had two readers respond. One was a woman, one was a man recently, and the woman saw my main character as being very strong, and the man saw the main character as being a victim. And so it was a very different interpretation of the character I had created. My character, Hope, creates a list. At one point when she's trying to figure out who she is, and she creates a list where she's strong and she's independent. And then she creates a list where she's perhaps a little weaker, and perhaps even not a victim, but where she's under the thumb of she's passive. And then she discovers that the list is interchangeable. And then that worries her. So there's it's complex. I think that what frightens us most is beyond the externals, is the internals, and the perhaps that we are not as different as we think we are. I think we're closer than very, very similar. And that perhaps is a little frightening.